Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host once again, Evan Davis. And the New York Yankees have made a stunning move. They are finalizing a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers for all-time closer Devin Williams. They're included in the deal is going to be Caleb Durbin, the prospect, and Nasty Nestor Cortez, along with cash considerations going over to Milwaukee for Devin Williams for a one-year rental, it seems. Now, what a big move this is for the Yankees, getting one of the best closers in the league. Now, obviously, he had his struggles in the wild card series against the Mets, but he's still an insanely consistent reliever, one of the highest strikeout per nine in all of baseball right now. And now he's heading over to New York to be their closer, moving Luke Weaver to the setup man. What do you think of this trade, Evan?
Well, wow. And again, people around the baseball world were saying maybe losing out on Juan Soto was the best thing that could have happened for this organization. You talk about now getting Max Fried on that 8-year, $215 million deal. And then a couple of days later, only 3 days later, you followed up with a trade of Devin Williams. Now, you can make the argument that the Yankees have overpaid for both of these guys. When you look at Caleb Durbin's numbers, this is a guy who was in AAA last year, was expected to be in the major leagues this year, just given the roster complexion of the Yankees at the time. But wow, what a huge get for the Milwaukee Brewers. And you're talking about now trading Corbin Burns last year, Devin Williams this year, really trying to shape up your team for the future. And that's exactly what they're doing. You're getting a 24-year-old in Caleb Durbin, who is a utility guy all over the infield. You look at his numbers in AAA last year, he was phenomenal. 82 games played only, but a 287 batting average, an OPS at 867, 47 walks to 37 strikeouts. And take a look at his Arizona Fall League numbers: 24 games played, batting 312 with a 976 OPS. Obviously, Arizona, the Heat, the ball carries out a little more. But nonetheless, it's putting bat to ball. I would rather focus on the 312 batting average. So now you look at the Milwaukee Brewers, who I want to focus on first. You have Bryce Terang, Joey Ortiz, and now Caleb Durbin, and figure out whoever you want to put at first base. Rhys Hoskins is on that second year of his deal. I wonder now if they trade him. Not a ton of value with him, but nonetheless. And then you're talking about William Contreras as your backstop, Jackson Chourio, Sal Frelick. They're probably going to trade Christian Yelich because then you have Garrett Mitchell there as well. This is a very young, exciting team. And if I'm a Milwaukee Brewers fan, I'm really loving what ownership is doing. Obviously, you want to compete, but if you're not going to be one of those top three teams consistently in the National League, why not just bite the bullet, say, you know what, we're just going to build for the future? Because eventually these teams like the Dodgers and the Phillies, they're going to age out. And then that's when the Brewers can come in. And having these guys young and under control is really going to help a small to middle market team like the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, and you talk about how just young they are. They have so much young pieces at every position. It's actually in like it- I talked about it before earlier in the year. They're just kind of like the Tampa Bay Rays of the NL, where they just keep, will trade away big pieces or big pieces, and then they'll just get back to normal. They'll just, figure out how to put stuff around this team and they'll end up in the playoffs once again. And I think this is a really smart move for the Brewers. Devin Williams, they didn't want to restructure his contract. They didn't want to pay him a lot of money because they're a cheap organization, but there's nothing wrong with that. And so as a result, let Gary Sanchez walk. They're probably going to, as you said, trade Christian Yelich and kind of figure out what to do from there and just, make these little moves and make big moves like this trade with Devin Williams. And now you have another future piece to your franchise. After Willie Adames just left for the Giants in free agency, you now get another second baseman who can move to third, or Joey
Wherever.
Ortiz who can move to short. You have all these movable pieces. You have Jackson Chourio, who's 20 years old and was one of the and would have won Rookie of the Year and if he was in the AL, but he was
Yeah.
in the NL, and there was two other all-time or two great prospects ahead of him. But yeah, the Milwaukee Brewers have such a good thing going where, they can actually end up competing again in the NL Central, and I believe they will, with an even younger team.
Yeah, and you look at what you're also getting in return, and I was always linking a guy like Sean Manaea or Jose Quintana to the Milwaukee Brewers because one of the things that they needed desperately was left-handed pitching. Now, obviously, Nestor Cortez, he's injured right now. He's probably not going to be healthy fully until, let's call it, June, for the sake of argument. Obviously, not outstanding left-handed pitcher, by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also a guy that doesn't walk a ton. He can eat innings for you. He gets a decent amount of strikeouts for a lefty, I would say. He's in that 23% strikeout range. His percentage is in the 87th percentile of baseball. So the Milwaukee Brewers are going to take that and turn him into a great left-handed pitching. We've seen the development that they've had with pitchers. You look at Tobias Myers as an example, and even to a stretch now, Devin Williams, who you obviously now get a nice return for. Uh, you look at the Yankees now that we can maybe jump to their perspective a little bit here. Look, this is a risk you're taking with Devin Williams, who, yes, he was great last year, but he also was injured for a good part of it. And when he came back, he did have 38 strikeouts and 21 and a third regular season innings, kind of teetered a bit during the playoffs, but that's kind of expected with pitchers because you're just consistently facing the same team. It's kind of hard to show something new, especially with relievers. Devin Williams is obviously in an arbitration year. He's going to be he's going to not undrafted. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent next year, but he's going to be 31 years old. Like if I'm the Yankees, what does that contract even look like next year? Are we talking about like a 3 year, 35, $39 million contract, something like that? Like this feels like something where you need to re-sign Devin Williams, especially after losing Juan Soto. Obviously, the number discrepancy is night and day, but now that you have Luke Weaver, Devin Williams, what happens with the rest of that bullpen? Obviously, they have a lot of guys that were going to be free agents. You look at Tommy Kahnle, who was a huge part for them in the postseason. He's also a UFA looking for a team. But I just think with the Yankees and with getting Devin Williams, and now you have him and Luke Weaver, I think your bullpen is more formidable, and it was phenomenal throughout the postseason. I mean, it definitely rivaled the Dodgers in terms of even bullpen ERA, and you still have Jonathan Loaiziga coming back from injury as well. There's pieces there for them. I wonder, what do they do with Marcus Stroman? Do they make him like a bulk reliever guy? But I think you've got to re-sign him. And this makes sense for the Yankees after losing Clay Holmes to their crosstown rival.
Yeah, and you just talk about how good that bullpen looks right now. Obviously Luke Weaver was their closer basically from the beginning of September to all the way to the World Series, and he was really good for them. He was one of their most reliable pieces, and he just kind of came out of not came out of nowhere, but Clay Holmes was struggling throughout the year, and they decided, all right, screw, we're just gonna roll with the hot hand. Luke Weaver's been really good for us. Make him the closer. And he was really good in the postseason. And now Clay Holmes, your former, now, they were putting him in like the sixth inning, seventh inning,
Yeah.
but he was kind of your main setup man. And now he's going to the Mets to be a starter, which is still kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
uh,
And they
you
didn't
now
want to do
have
that with Seth Lugo. Sorry.
yeah, and you now have uh Devin Williams coming in and you're bumping Luke Weaver back up to that eighth, that kind of a setup man for your Devin Williams now because you're not gonna make him uh a setup man. You still have like Tim Hill, Jake Cousins, these guys like
You don't have
Tim
Tim Hill.
he left.
Well, he was on a 1 year deal. You have Jake Cousins. You just don't have Tim
Yeah.
Hill.
Okay. I thought Tim Hill would have re-signed.
Well,
But
as of right now, yes.
yeah. There's still a lot of other pieces in this bullpen that you can still use. And you're the Yankees. They always find a way to turn some guy who had like a 5 ERA and turn him into like a 2 ERA guy.
Oh, don't put them on the Dodgers level here,
Hey,
buddy.
they have this kind of they have a pitching facility. Matt Blake over there has some pitching voodoo magic over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you get Devin Williams now, and that's such a big get for them where like he is one of the best pitchers, one of the best closers in baseball. And Jeff Passan just tweeted that since his debut in 2019, he's first in hits per nine, sixth in home runs per nine, fourth in K per nine with 14.3 Ks per nine, and second in ERA since his debut in 2019. He is probably one of the best, one of the most consistent, one of the best relievers in baseball. And now he's going to be a
No.
New York Yankee.
The reason why the Brewers were so comfortable with letting Josh Hader go was because of the success of Devin Williams, as you alluded to. Now that he's age 30, I don't know. Like again, the Yankees are kind of overpaying for talent right now, which can be okay, but at the same time, the Yankees weren't a Devin Williams away from winning the World Series last year. So, and they weren't like a max, actually, they might have been a max free. I don't know his playoff numbers, but the team needs offense, is what I'm trying to allude to. Like pitching was never the issue for them, really. I know Clark Schmidt and Luis Heel kind of struggled in the World Series and throughout the postseason, but offense can solve those issues. I mean, we saw the Dodgers fall 5-0 to the Yankees and then still end up winning 7-6 because the offense was so prolific. So if you're the Yankees, you still need a Teoscar Hernandez or an Anthony Santander. And if you could bring back Glaber, although that door seems kind of closed, but what I'm trying to get to is like this team still isn't a championship level team, especially after Juan Soto left, considering him and Stan were really the only two focal points of the offense.
Yeah, and you're right. They do need another bat, and they've been really fortifying up, their run prevention. It seems like, and like you said with Gleyber Torres, you don't know what's really going on with him. It like we said a couple days ago that he was thinking about taking a deal with the Jays or the Angels, and then obviously the Jays trade for Andres Jimenez, and now the Angels. It's like, are you really going to spend a 1 year, $18 million contract in Anaheim for a year if they give you that? Like, I think there might be a world where Gleyber Torres comes back, even though it doesn't seem like it. Um, but it just makes the most sense for him to leave so that they can move Jazz to second and they can find another bat to put in. Like they were looking at Alex Bregman, they were looking at Christian Walker, they were looking at Kyle Tucker. They need to make a move for a bat. Like, and I bet in a couple days or maybe even 2 hours from now there'll be another
On my
trade where it's
flight,
yeah,
emergency pod.
there'll be a trade for Kyle Tucker, or there'll be a trade for or they'll sign Alex Bregman, and then it'll make a lot more sense. But as it stands right now, the Yankees need another bat, and granted, there's still so many bats available in free agency. Literally, no one else has signed that was a big bat since we did our last pod. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's still a out there.
Yeah.
We just yeah,
Oh, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, it's good.
Well, I mean, there was even just a report today that the Houston Astros declined an offer from the Phillies that included Nick Castellanos and Alec Boehm for Kyle Tucker. And I think, like, if you're the Yankees, and if we want to just like, we're not going off topic here, but it's still relevant to the Yankees. If you want Kyle Tucker, the reality of the situation is like, you're going to have to trade Jason Dominguez. And I know it sounds crazy, but when Kyle Tucker is healthy, he's a top seven player in baseball. Like, he was on track to have a 5 WAR this season before he got hurt. He plays just above average or even closer to elite level defense. He has a great bat. And this is a guy that can hit you 30 home runs, get you 100 RBIs, and he's batting from the left side, which makes him more valuable. If the Yankees want him, it's going to be one of Spencer Jones or Jason Dominguez that's leaving. And right now, if you're Steinbrenner and you're Cashman, are you really going to risk that? Because with all due respect to the Yankees, outside of Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones, like they don't have that many eye-catching top 100 prospects within their system. So I look at it and I just think to myself, like, I don't really know if it makes sense. And as of the recording today on December 13th, Jason Dominguez is the only top 100 prospect that the Yankees have. And he's at number 14 right now, according to MLB.com. You have to be faced with the reality like, are we giving up Jason Dominguez or one of those guys? Because you could go after Cody Bellinger, which would be cheaper, and I don't think you would have to give up a Spencer Jones or Jason Dominguez for that. But obviously, the bat power isn't as equivalent to Juan Soto as Kyle Tucker is. So, look, I don't know what they do going forward, but this team I still wouldn't put as a contender in the MLB overall. The American League is a lot weaker than the National League as of right now. So I would put them up top in terms of the American League, but looking at it in a vacuum throughout the entire NL, I would put like 5 teams in the National League ahead of the Yankees.
Yeah, and like you said with Jason Dominguez right now, bro's been a prospect for 12 years. Uh, I think bro came out the womb and he was already thinking about as a prospect for the Yankees. But I joke. They need to find a way to make a trade and get a bat, even if it's Kyle Tucker. Even as much as I would hate that as a Jays fan, they need to find a way to get a bat. And I know we talk about how they've been unable to make these kind of moves recently where you lose out on Juan Soto and you offered Yamamoto money and he didn't come. Uh
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, there's been these types of moves where maybe back in the day, the Yankees would have made these moves and paid the extra money and got the big name free agents or made the big name trades. And they kind of started doing that right now with Devin Williams, where, he was available. And granted, it's only a 1 year deal as of right now. I don't know if the Yankees are gonna be getting a extension done. They better hope so. If they're just seeing what
Uh,
happened with Juan Soto leaving them, they gotta find a way to see if Devin Williams is willing to commit to a contract extension. But yeah, like they need to find a way to get a bat, whether that be Kyle Tucker, whether that be signing uh Bregman or signing Christian Walker or signing someone else. I think any Scott Boras client is not willing to go to the Yankees. I feel like that bridge is kind of burned at this
I know,
point. Just
like, God, that press conference yesterday.
yeah,
Oh my God. That was like, for those that, didn't watch, like, Scott Boras, like, inadvertently just basically said F you to the Yankees.
yeah, and
Like,
that's really big. That's a huge thing to happen because Scott Boras represents a lot of players,
yeah.
and whether like him or not, he makes a lot of deals for these players, and he has basically the leverage to say, "We're not talking to the Yankees." Like
Yeah,
he can
like
just say that.
when Blake, like, just, I know we're getting off topic here, but like, when Blake Snell signed with the Dodgers, Blake Snell's a Scott Boras client. I think it was the first Scott Boras client to sign with the Dodgers in like 6 or 7 years. Like, there had always been a running thing that, like, because of the bridges that were burned, like, Scott Boras just never sent his clients to those teams. And, you know, back to Devin Williams, and this is something that I didn't realize. Do you know what his postseason ERA and WHIP is? And granted, it's only in 2 1/3 innings pitched, but like that's even worse then.
I just saw it's like 23.14 ERA.
Yeah, with a 3.43 WHIP.
Yeah. Like he did struggle in this last postseason. Like he did struggle to the Mets. He gave up that 3-run bomb to Pete Alonso. Like
And this is a guy like who in 2023 and 2024 in his postseason pitching years, in the regular season, a 1.53 ERA and a 1.25 ERA with a WHIP under one. So in the regular season, he's phenomenal. In the postseason, in a short sample size, albeit, but then again, that's a little bit more concerning that you've only had that and that's what you've turned out. Like, this is the guy that gave up that home run to Pete Alonso that eventually sent his team packing. So, you know, Yankee State, where he gave up that home run to Pete Alonso in right field, it doesn't get better at Yankee Stadium, I'll tell you that.
yeah. But yeah, it's a really big move for the Yankees. You get away with nasty Nestor Cortez, and this kind
Oh.
of solidifies the funny thing is the last pitch Cortez ever threw was
A walk-off
the
grand
walk
slam.
off. Yeah. But other than that, it really solidifies this Yankees rotation so far. Now it
Hmm.
seems, you have your five, and what happens with Marcus Stroman? As you said, is he going to be just a a long bullpen guy at this point, or is he just going to be backup for whoever else is like if anyone else gets injured? Clark Schmidt missed time. Garrett Cole, obviously, he should be fine going into next year, but there is that kind of his role now, where he's just kind of going to be a long man and out of the pen, or you never know. Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joining alongside my co-host once again, Evan Davis. And during Evan's flight on his way back to LA, the Chicago Cubs made a blockbuster move that is sending shockwaves across the MLB, trading for Astros great Kyle Tucker in a deal that includes infielder Isak Paredes, pitcher Hayden Wesneski, and third base prospect Cam Smith. King Tuck goes to Chicago in a move that the Cubs desperately wanted to make to shore up their lineup and bring some excitement to Chicago. However, Tucker is a free agent after this upcoming season, and there are questions surrounding the fact if Chicago will be able to retain the 27-year-old right fielder. But Evan, I'll ask you, what are your thoughts on this move?
I mean, I hate the Astros, but I love this because I love seeing their downfall. I mean, what was it? We're gonna get rid of Correa because we want to re-sign Bregman. We're gonna get rid of Bregman so we'll re-sign Kyle Tucker. And now Kyle Tucker is gone, and it's just like I don't get the direction of the Astros. Like I thought this was a team that would be willing to spend and like maybe their whole identity, like they're really showing their true colors. And I really I never understood it. And like Kyle Tucker, like I don't think people, and we talked about this earlier today, like I don't think people realize how good Kyle Tucker is. Like when healthy, he's a top 7 player in baseball. And general manager of the Astros, Dana Brown, is going to have a lot of explaining to do as to why his World Series team, or it wasn't his team that he crafted, but the team that he's inherited over the years has kind of teetered. And look, you get a phenomenal return for Kyle Tucker. And I just think the Astros were maybe looking at this as like, we just want to get value for him on the chance that he doesn't even re-sign in Houston. But I think that's just a bad look on the team. It's like you got to retain your own players here. And I get it's like, Juan Soto got 765 million, so Kyle Tucker was probably going to get 400 million, but you're going to have to pay for players. Like we've seen that with teams. Like it's pay to win in the MLB, but nonetheless, it's a great return. Isak Paredes is going to eat in the Crawford box. If you look at his statistical numbers, he's a guy that hits it to left field. It would favor him very greatly. And what you could do is you put Paredes at third, and then when Cam Smith is ready, who's been phenomenal, he could be in the MLB by next year. You can move him to third base and then move Paredes to first base. But I think it's a bad look for the Astros if they lose Bregman, Tucker. Obviously you're gonna have to pay Yordan Alvarez eventually, but you also lost Springer. Like you're gonna have to pay for players eventually, or else you're just gonna be mediocre.
Yeah, it looks like the only player they really only pay for is Jose Altuve to keep re-signing him to deals every single time. And eventually Jordan's gonna get that another mega deal soon.
Hmm.
After once his contract's eventually up in 2029. But still, what you talk about right now with the Astros is they needed are they playing right now that this means Bregman's 100% gone, or are they going to try and just move Paredes back to first base and try and, like I don't know what this means for them. Do they what do the Astros do from here? And you bring up a good question with, what is their motive right now? What is their plan going into next year? Because it is a very genuine question. The Astros made a move to get Jose Abreu. They spent a lot of money on him, and now
Yeah.
they're kind of eating that money now because of
Hmm.
how god awful he was last year.
Hmm.
And now it's like, okay, who else are we gonna really spend money on? Jeremy Pena was okay in this last year. He was an average hitter, but he's never really gotten past like his best year was his rookie year.
Yeah.
And now he's just kind of been stagnant and kind of even been declining since then.
Hmm.
Uh, and now it's like, okay, what else do the Astros have to do? They need to find a way to shore up their infield on the possibility that Bregman does leave, and it's looking very likely now.
Yeah, he probably
And
is.
you kind of have it sucks losing Kyle Tucker just because of how great the bat is, but he wasn't there half the season anyway, and the Astros still made a run. They started off awfully and still came back from that awful start without Kyle Tucker for a majority of it. So maybe the Astros are looking at it like it's addition by subtraction where it sounds stupid, but they do get, Paredes, who you said there was somebody who overlaid his baseball savant
Yeah.
grade chart over Minute Maid
So
Park, and
funny.
and it looks like he's gonna hit like 50 home runs next year if he just
Yeah, I
keeps the
know.
same output.
He might be a first round pick in fantasy baseball. Like he might hit 50 home runs this year.
It's a genuine thought where it's like it's addition by subtraction where you put him in the lineup and maybe you're running the risk of, yeah, maybe Kyle Tucker ends up re-signing with Chicago. But who says the Astros don't try and give him an offer in next year free agency? It's possible. It's been done before where free agents have been traded the year of and then
Mhm.
have a potential to go back.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't honestly rule that out because then you're like, because I like we're talking about what the Astros are doing. What are the Cubs doing? Because right now they have a very crowded outfield where they have Ian Happ, PCA, and now Kyle Tucker, where Cody Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki are kind of the odd man out here. And what happens with Michael Bush at first base? Like I don't really know. Like he had his moments where they said that the Dodgers got fleeced in that trade, and then there's moments where he's kind of been the player that was the reason why the Dodgers let him go. So is Cody Bellinger on the move? Is Seiya Suzuki on the move? Suzuki, I would think more just because he said he doesn't want to be a DH anymore. But I mean, you're not going to be playing in the outfield when you have when you have two, I'm sorry, you have one Gold Glover, a guy in PCA who is probably one of the best young center fielders, and then you also have an all-star in Kyle Tucker. So there's not enough spots to fill, and I just don't understand the direction of the Cubs. Like, why go for Kyle Tucker? Like, I know it sounds crazy because he's a phenomenal player, but like, you don't need another outfielder. And I also just thought, looking at things in the grand scheme, like, I thought Cade Smith was going to be or Cam Smith was going to be a Cade or Cam Smith. Am I getting that right?
Damn.
Cam Smith, I apologize. I thought Cam Smith was maybe going to be a part of their future. You look at his numbers already to start the year. He was just a first round draft pick. I feel bad for the 2024 first round class because they're just getting traded everywhere. Brady Montgomery got traded, but Cam Smith made it all the way up to Double A in his first year in the minor leagues. Like he's progressing at a rapid pace. He's only 21 years old. Like he can be in the major leagues by the time he's 23. I just I don't really get what the Cubs are doing. I get, last year was definitely underwhelming for them. They paid all that money for Craig Counsell. They didn't even get close to the division. Um, but it would honestly be really funny if the Astros ended up signing Kyle Tucker again, which I wouldn't completely rule out. But at the same time, it's just like you got to retain some of your players. Like the fact that you got Cam Smith and Isak Paredes tells me that you're basically planning for Alex Bregman not to be a part of this team.
Yeah, that's the big question mark about it. And one of the other big questions, as you alluded to, was Seiya Suzuki. What do the Cubs do with him? Now, originally when they were first discussing this trade, it was Paredes and
And
Suzuki.
Suzuki.
And now it's like, okay, so Suzuki's still in the team. Are they trying to find him another home and trying to get, some more depth back, like in the lineup or in pitching? You don't really know what you're gonna get from him right now because as you said, he doesn't want to be a DH anymore. He spent half the year as the DH for the Cubs, and now you know, he wants to be back in the outfield. That's the reason he came over from Japan. He wanted to
Hmm.
be an outfielder in MLB, not be a DH full time. He's not Shohei Ohtani. He wants to be he wants to be in the outfield.
You ain't
Um,
Shohei, baby.
but
I
yeah,
mean,
like
his defense sucks anyways. Like, it's not the greatest in the world, but, I guess when you're not really playing that much, then
yeah, he doesn't want to be a DH because that's the easiest way to get like thrown out of the league faster than anything. If you're
yeah.
not providing anything at all and you're just hitting like 250, nobody's gonna want you. But I think with Suzuki, it makes sense for him to want to play in the outfield. Obviously, everybody wants to play every day,
Hmm.
but Kyle Tucker is obviously like the outfield's pretty much already set. I feel like what do they do now with Cody Bellinger? With
Yankees.
he's not going to be playing center field. PCA is going to be playing center field
Hmm.
full time for them. Granted, if his bat can keep the thing keep stay around league average,
Hmm.
but with Bellinger, as you just said, the Yankees got to look at it right now and say we got to make a move for him. Like
Hmm.
this is the prime opportunity. You struck out, and we were saying this earlier today. You need a bat, and Kyle Tucker was supposed to be that bat. There was propaganda on Yankees Twitter saying about how great Kyle Tucker is. He might be better than Juan Soto. Don't even play with yourself.
I mean,
Uh,
he's definitely up there in terms of talent.
he is, but currently, I don't think he's
Oh
better than
yeah, no,
Juan Soto.
currently no.
Yeah. So it's like get a trade for a bat, even if it is Cody Bellinger and it's the whatever a year of Cody Bellinger because of
Hmm.
his option. He might decline the following option. He
Hmm.
has two option years, right? It was 3 years,
Yeah,
90.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He has two player options.
yeah.
So there's a genuine you gotta make a move for Cody Bellinger right now. And that's another thing the Cubs could be looking for. Could we
Hmm.
trade Suzuki? Could we trade Bellinger and get more pieces to fortify, pitching
Hmm.
uh further down in the lineup? Because that top three in the lineup right now it looks pretty solid. Like you still have Dansby Swanson, you still have Ian Happ, and now you got Kyle Tucker. You
Hmm.
have Nico Horner, Michael Bush. If he can stay, if he can have a more consistent stretch, that looks pretty decent. And you obviously
Hmm.
have the defensive Pete Crow Armstrong. It's a nice kind of semblance of a team you got going with already the rotation you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like with Matt Shaw coming up in through the minor leagues, like Nico Horner is definitely a trade candidate where you can get more pieces. Say Suzuki, as we alluded to, he has 2 years of contract of I don't know if you want to say team control, but like he's
Yeah.
got 2 more years left on his contract where you can get a decent amount for him. He had an 850 OPS last year. This is with 20 home runs. Like you'll take that from an outfielder. So they definitely have options where this team can get better. They definitely need to bulk up their starting pitching. Obviously they have guys like Justin Steele and Imanaga, and now they got Matthew Boyd for whatever reason because you need 17 lefties in your rotation. But um, I just think this team is definitely heading in a direction. I feel like they're kind of teetering between like, do we want to be a contender or do we want to retool this roster? Because they have a lot of young talent. I will say I feel like they're giving up on too much of it. Like when you look at it through these trades, like a guy like Smith, and then even I'll even bring it up like last offseason when they gave up Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope in that trade for Michael Bush. Like it's really not looking good for them right now, just in terms of the trajectory of Hope and Ferris. So I don't know what the Cubs are doing really, but I wouldn't. They're definitely not done because now they got to figure out like Bellinger and Suzuki. Just they feel gone. Like like what are you gonna do with them? Like they would be more valuable on someone else's team. And I think it sucks for Bellinger because it looked like he was doing really well in Chicago and the numbers show that. But I mean, my God, get him to New York. Give him that right field, give him that left field side. I mean, he hits more to straightaway center, but when he pulls the ball like in New York Stadium, like that's really not going to be it's not going to be a problem for him in terms of hitting a home run.
Yeah, and I think of it as like you look at what first of all to get Isak Paredes, they traded Christopher Morel and they traded some other minor league prospects and Hunter
Hmm.
Biggie and stuff like that. But now you flip Isak Paredes, who had an awful second half of the season after being traded to Chicago, and some of that is due to, being in a new environment, especially one where the wind's pretty much always blowing in. So your fly balls are being forced back into the infield a lot of the time, or sometimes it's
Hmm.
being helped by it. But uh, you flip him and you flip uh obviously, yeah, you did draft Cam Smith pretty high,
Yeah.
but now you got for at least one season, you got one of the best players in baseball. Like you said, a top seven player in baseball when he's healthy.
Hmm.
And does it make sense that if they, let him, like, they're gonna try and get a contract extension, ironed out as quickly as possible if they
Hmm.
can. I think if I'm Kyle Tucker, I'm waiting until free agency after seeing what Juan Soto got. Obviously, I'm not Juan Soto. I'm not getting 765 million, but I could probably get around 500 million if I stay healthy for a full year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like if I'm Kyle Tucker, I might as well just sign the contract now. Because, like, realistically, I don't think if he continues to traject the way that we're expecting, like, I don't see that adding on like an extra 50 or 60 million because we already know what he is. Like with Juan Soto, I feel like that's more going to be like an outlier where it's just like Steve Cohen did not want to get outbid and he was going to do whatever it took. And if that meant giving $800 million to a player, then so be it. To him, that's like $10 for us, that's like $10 to him. Like, I don't like, I don't see Kyle Tucker getting that same type from a dollar standpoint, and I just don't think that like him having this insane season is really going to. change people's perspective on it. And the fact that Juan Soto's already with the Mets, like we know Steve Cohen isn't going after Kyle Tucker. Look, he's going to be 27, 28 years old when he's a free agent. So he's obviously not also going to get the same amount of years, but could he get 8 years for 300 million? I think so. I might as well just take the money now. Like, especially if you don't, if this injury continues to nag on, like, I think it's worth just saying yes, but you also have a right to free agency, and I think he would do that. It's just if you're the Cubs, like the biggest contract you gave out was Jason Hayward for 148 million. Like
And that
you're
was a
not
bad
give
contract.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it was a bad contract, but like you're not going to get away with that with Kyle Tucker. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to add on about like 200 million more.
Yeah, it's a real it's a crazy situation that they're in because now it's like you got to try and give that deal. You have to try and get Kyle Tucker to resign because
Hmm.
you spent a lot. Like I
Yeah, this is a
know
lot.
like
Oh, sorry.
you're making that move and you're trading your top one of your top prospects. I'm surprised it wasn't Matt Shaw because there was reports that that the Astros really wanted Matt Shaw and
Hmm.
now it's okay. Now it's Cam Smith and that's another really big prospect though.
Hmm.
They need to figure out what they're doing and try and shore up a lineup even more. And that's probably going to have to do with we got to trade Cody Bellinger. We got to trade Seiya Suzuki. We got to shore up our depth to, have a better nine-man lineup. And then I feel like the rotation's good enough as is right now. Like it's
Hmm.
decent. It's not perfect, but it's not god awful where it's like they need something more. I think they have
I mean, it's
enough right now.
whatever. Like,
It's
it's
it,
whatever.
yeah, it's a decent lineup. Like it's not the worst, it's not the best. Everyone in their lineup, no, the only person who had an ERA above 4 was Kyle Hendricks. Now I know it's not to you can't really rely on that.
Hmm.
Like everyone else, they did year to year, it's always different with pitchers, but
Hmm.
it's a good foundation to start on where you have
Hmm.
Imanaga, you have Justin Steele, obviously, but
Hmm.
like they need something else.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't know. I'm still just thinking about like if the Cubs management and ownership is this aggressive where you give up Paredes who has 3 years of team control, like that's a serious thing. And then you're also talking about Cam Smith, who's basically under team control for like what the next 6 years, and then you give up Wisniewski, who's also under team control for a couple more years. Like you're talking about like for a small to mid-market level team, like it is a big deal to your point. And with this rotation, they're going to have to figure things out because Wisniewski was like one of their only right-handed pitchers outside of Javier Assad, who, he has his moments, but I wouldn't trust him in a playoff game if they even get to that point. And I mean, they're really going to have to be uber aggressive this offseason to even convince Kyle Tucker, like, yeah, this is a place where I believe we can win a championship. Because right now, if I'm Kyle Tucker and I look at this rotation, I'm like, which starter would outweigh my opponent? Because, like, realistically, Imanaga and Steele, I don't even know would they be your game one, game two, because you don't want back-to-back lefties. Like, they got to figure this out. They got to get a bigger fish. Do they get Sasaki? I don't know. Dodgers look like they're getting Sasaki. They always, the LA Japanese, Team Japan with everyone, but there's still like a Walker Bueller out there. Obviously, Corbin Burns is out there. Jack Flaherty is out there. Like, this is a great time if you're a team that needs starting pitching. And I think they're gonna have to do something that they haven't done, and that is really spend a lot in the off season because they even pay that much for Imanaga and Boyd, whatever, 15 million. But you gotta really convince Kyle Tucker that this is a team that can win in a division that is kind of weak, where the Brewers are pulling off again. But who knows with Pat Murphy and that organization? Um, but I digress. Like you have the Cardinals that are retooling, you have the Reds that are still like in a quote unquote retool rebuild. The Brewers are going to take a step back. I think they're going to trade Yelich after trading Devin Williams. And then what? There's the Cubs there. And then you have the Pirates as well, who don't like any good players on their team. I joke, but like this basically is the Cubs division to lose at this point. And I think you just got to be aggressive with it and then re-sign Tucker and have the most disgusting outfield.
Yeah, I think right now, as you if you look at it, it looks more like, this is probably the best time to make a trade this early in free agency where
Mhm,
you still have enough time to, let's look at a Jack Flaherty. He's probably
mhm.
not going to be the most expensive starting pitcher available. Can we try and pry him away from eventually going back to Detroit? Can
Yeah.
we can we look at other guys who are still out there that are, maybe you can take a flyer on and give them a 1 year deal worth more
Mhm.
than they would get, and that kind of brings them over to you. Can you
Yeah.
look at anyone else that you can even sign in free agency? Like they also made a follow-up move today where they signed Carson Kelly to be a
Yeah.
backup catcher
Mhm.
instead of old Yan Gomes, uh, they have now another backup catcher.
Mhm.
It's they're pretty smart in how they're doing this, where they're just looking up at, who else can help us right now. And I think
Mhm.
that's really smart for them to do, just to look around their surroundings and see who else can they add.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking right now at like the starting pitchers available. Like, there's a lot of guys that they could potentially go after that wouldn't cost a ton. Like, you look at a guy like Michael Lorenzen or even Cal Quantrill. Like, those are guys that you could probably get like on a 1 year, 10, $11 million deal. Like, for the Cubs, like, it doesn't have to be the creme de la creme of like a Corbin Burns, for instance, or even to a certain extent Jack Flaherty, where Flaherty's probably going to get closer to $100 million if he gets a multi-year contract, but you can get guys that are cheap and reliable. Like Walker Buehler's talking about a multi-year deal, but like he always says that he loves pitching in the cold, and I get baseball's a summer sport, but like for the first couple of months, like it's going to be a little chilly there in Chicago.
Yeah.
But you have a guy like Bueller available. You have Cal Quantrill available. Michael Lorenzen, as I already mentioned, Colin Ray, like there are guys that aren't sexy names, but if you're a team that is not known for spending, you could kind of work your way around this and totally figure something out. And if you do want to get a Jack Flaherty, it's probably going to be like a 3 year, $65 million contract or something along those lines. And there's a lot for them to do where like they could still be an uber competitive team. I don't think they could be a championship caliber team, but they got to prove to their fan base and now most importantly their best player that like this is a team that can contend in the National League.
Yeah, that's the main thing about it. And yeah, like you said, there's still other free agents out there. You know, it's the perfect time to make this kind of a deal where you want to be able to have flexibility in your lineup. You want to be
Hmm.
able to have, time to make another counter move. You don't want to make this move like February or like early January where it's like,
Hmm.
okay, most of the other guys are gone now. Now we just have to, deal with scraps to pick up.
Hmm.
Especially with a move of this nature where you're trading two men who are on your 40 man and then one of your top prospects.
Hmm.
Like there's still other avenues for them to add to their team right now. And it's really smart for them to make this kind of a move this early where they can, try and get Kyle Tucker to re-sign. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of questions still to be had about this lineup and this team for the Cubs, but it isn't the worst spot to be in right now.
Yeah, I mean definitely, and there's still a lot left, like Corbin Burns. Me.
No, I don't think there's a shot. I think it's
Yeah,
the
you're
giant
right. Yeah, he's going
the
to the Dodgers. What am I kidding, man?
it's the Giants and Jays. Those are the two right now.
Okay, so it's the Giants.
Yeah. It's 100% the Giants.
Or you can just go to the Jays. So that way, not every good player's in the National League. Like,
Yeah.
whoever wins the National League this year should just get the automatic World Series trophy. Just like Kyle Tucker comes to the NL, Juan Soto's back in the National League. Like,
Hey, Devin Williams got traded, bro.
oh yeah, I'm so worried about that 23 and a
Relax.
half ERA in the postseason. But yeah,
Relax.
no, like with the Cubs, it's interesting. I don't get like good for them, but like when you trade one of your best prospects, like you better be able to re-sign the player that you traded for. And I think, the Cubs are going to have to do that in the end.
Yeah. There's a lot of different things they could do. They could look to just sign a full-time DH. There still is JD Martinez out there and Jock
Hmm.
Peterson. Jock Peterson Cubs reunion? That's a possibility.
Shock
Uh,
Peterson on the Cubs.
yeah. I'm just saying, I don't think I think it's a decent trade for them just to, I'll always say that the team that gets the best player wins the trade as of
Hmm.
right now because you never know what can happen with Cam Smith. Like he is still a prospect. There have been prospects that are like, oh yeah, they're surefire, going to be one of the top players in baseball, and they never pan out. So I
Yeah.
think you get the best player in the deal right now, you win the trade. Like,
Hmm.
and now Isaac Paredes does move to a place where he's probably going to hit 50 home runs, probably third. Imagine they had the trash can with him around.
Oh my
Holy
God.
crap.
He'd
He'd
be
be
Barry
like,
Bonds.
yeah, that's on God, he'd actually be that. But yeah, like it's a crazy, I think it's a good deal for both teams. I think both teams get what they want. The Astros wanted to have, somebody that could play third base or first base, somebody that can switch between those positions, especially if Bregman leaves.
Hmm.
They wanted to have flexibility in their infield, and now they
Hmm.
have that. And the Cubs obviously get the best player in the deal. I think both teams made out like they both made pretty well with the trade.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that'll
I
just
think
about do
that's
it.
it.
That'll just about do it for this episode of Breaking News Bears. I want to go and thank you guys, the listeners. I once again want to thank my co-host Evan Davis for his takes. What a crazy day this has been. First of all, we started with the Devin Williams news, and now on his flight back to LA, not to Chicago, uh, the Cubs make a trade with the Astros.
Yeah. Still in the still in the private jet clothes, you know.
Yeah, what an insane deal! What an insane day! Thank you guys listening for another episode of Breaking News Bears.